Hi, it's Rob Hetherington from the Future Experience Project, where we look at the coolest things that humans have made, both in the past to see what was great, and in the future to see what's next. And on this podcast, we've got Gebal Group's very own Calum Mills, Group Head of Sport and Education. And this podcast is all about sport and recreation across the GCC. So we want to talk about super cool things that we've done in Gebal, but also in general, because at its heart, you are a sportsman. And I want to hear about your background, particularly your golf background. But unfortunately for listeners, but exciting for you, talking about Sunderland too, because that's probably your biggest passion, even above your beloved Gebal. So welcome, Calum.
Oh, thanks for having me. We'll sort of start with my role first then, and we'll get on to my loves in life. So yes, as Rob said, I am the Group Head of Education and Leisure Sales for Gebal Group. My day-to-day role is to make sure that we are catering to the very large and vast education sector here in the UAE, trying to obviously meet with new clients and servicing the ones that we are fortunate to have repeat business in. And now on the leisure side, trying to grow the business and our name within hotel groups, and to try and offer our services to benefit the existing and growing leisure sector here as well.
Perfect. And you're super passionate about this, and that is because you're passionate about sport. So I want to understand about your golf background.
Okay, right.
Because golf is massive here. And I know that certainly if there's really important meetings that happen over in this part of the world, there's typically a golf match somewhere. So, and you always beat the company owner, right? Alex Chawani. I think you beat him every time, is what I've heard.
No, that's why I've still got a job, because I let him win. So I got into golf when I was about 13 years old. My dad is a very good golfer, still is now at the age of 66. It was something that, not surprisingly really, it came quite naturally to me because of his background in golf. It's taken me quite far around the world. Played a couple of events over in Southeast Asia. I've played a lot around Europe. Played collegiate level and university golf as well. I could have been a career a long time ago, but for one fault or another, probably my own, it didn't turn out and didn't pan out that way. But I wouldn't be sat here today if it did, and to be sat here today talking about something that I'm very passionate about for a company that I am very passionate about is an honour as well.
Yeah. And it's sport across the board for you. So golf was a passion. Well, still is a passion. You're still playing at +1.
Yep, still
right?
playing at +1. Yeah.
But you apply this across many different sports, and I know that in sport and recreation across the GCC there are all the obvious ones, but the amount of things that are happening, certainly in the UAE, but also in KSA, whereby they're building public spaces which are for football and other things, but they're trying to do as many innovative things as possible, both in local parks, local sport facilities, but also private areas, particularly private schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so sports facilities, whether it's public realm or it's education, now that the Middle East is growing and developing at a rate of knots, Dubai and the UAE have always been the pinnacle for the Middle East in terms of tourism, its attractive nature. Education here is obviously very big. That they're wanting now the sports facilities to reflect the environment in which they stand. For example, we've just completed a project at Repton Dubai, which is, I think, the third largest education campus here in the UAE. We were fortunate enough to be able to deliver on 2 World Rugby certified pitches in a 35,000 square metre space, which is surrounded by an athletics area, 5 individual mugger courts, which are a multi-use games area for people who don't know, 3 paddle courts, 2 pickleball courts, and 2 7-a-side pitches. That now will be, I would imagine, a flagship installation for Gebal going forward, because it really does show our capabilities. And for someone who played football when they were younger, played football for the school, played rugby a couple of times, to be able to see that within a school ground is very, very impressive.
When we first got involved, when Gebal first got involved in that project, that's a big range of activities. What's the philosophy that's in behind it? It's the third largest campus. It's a massive lead for Repton to be a go-to for these things. And having brought my family over last summer, there is all the facilities are amazing, but where you've got Olympic-sized swimming pool or a really large or full-size running track is differentiated. But it's not just a few things, they've done many. So is there, on the government side, is there a push for a bigger range of sports now? And are we seeing that trickling through the curriculum when you're dealing with all these projects?
Yeah, there is. I mean, the GCC sports boom, I think, it's developed over time. But I believe there is a strategy which is being driven by the UAE government called National Strategy 2031, which is where the endeavour is to try and grow elite athletes from within the region, whether it's Emirati or it's expats that have come to the UAE within education, or to send them to schools whereby they have the facilities and the resources to develop them. Could be, I don't know, for example, in the future they may develop Olympians from within. Now that's 5 years away as such. That's a long time to be able to breed elite athletes, but it shows the direction in which the UAE is going, to try and become not just a tourist destination, but an area for people to look at, to be able to take skilled athletes around the world and potentially put them into universities in the States as such, to be able to take them to the next level of education and from a sporting direction.
So we've got that drive in private schools. It's also, what I've observed here is there's world-leading events in the UAE, but there's certainly perhaps more in the press, bigger events that are being linked to Saudi, so boxing and everything that's happening there, and it's making that awareness, and it's perhaps trickling into people being more active. But in the UAE, and if I take Abu Dhabi, there's parks, particularly in Masdar City, Massa Park and Masdar Park. You've got some amazing fitness parks there. In fact, Gebal did one at Masdar Park, where you haven't just got running track features, you've got running tracks with hills in. Mm-hmm. And when you go there, it's massively used. It's being driven by the same philosophy, isn't it? So, for example, we know in the UAE there's a massive passion for cycling, and the velodrome, I think, is near completing on Hudria Island. It's insane. And so, but rather than just being iconic adult facilities or sports that are being funded, like the UAE cycling team, what you're saying to me is that it's not just in public realm, but they're not just building lots of things, they're trying to be different in every area. Schools have been the same. So we come back to Repton. How many more types of facilities or have they done compared to most other schools? Because you're saying it's the third largest campus. Have they broken the mould in how many things they've done there, for example?
I would say Repton, for as long as I've lived here, has always been a large campus. I would say the space was underutilised, because what they've now developed there is an extension of an area of around another 10,000 square metres onto their existing old football pitch. They are a boarding school as well, which means that they have children that stay there for a full term, overnight, on the weekends they're there. But the campus, I believe, holds 3,000 students. 3,000 students in a space that is 35,000 square metres for their quasi-sports village is an amazing space to be able to learn to better your skills as a footballer, a rugby player, learn how to run, become a high-end elite triple jumper. There's even a shot put area there as well, and obviously with paddle being the fastest growing sport.
Wait a second, did you try the shot put?
I didn't. No.
I can just imagine.
I'd say my shoulder would probably go. But on the flip side of it, paddle is the fastest growing sport in the world. Yeah. There are 3 paddle courts there. I'll say this now, there's nothing stopping any student at that school from becoming the next number 1 paddle player in the world. You have paddle division seriously. I know you often see it on TV, and it's always based in Qatar. It's something that Gebal were looking at in how much more is that going to grow, because we know we're looking at athlete programs and sponsoring in that sense, and paddle is definitely one of those areas. It's what you're thinking, right? Yeah, 100%. It's a very, very easy sport to sponsor, because you've got these big glass structures that you can put a name and a brand to it. But with there being the boom, I would say 4 years ago when paddle moved its way into the UAE, there are thousands of paddle courts here.
Yeah.
But the more that are built, it gives someone an equal opportunity to become equally as good as the better players ahead of them.
Yeah.
It's a chance to learn, it's a chance to grow. And something that we definitely, as a company, try to support within education is the ability to grow, the ability to develop. What's your next step? How can we challenge children within the schools, whether it's building a playground, building a sports facility that wasn't previously there? I like to be able to look back at the projects that we've completed and said, if we hadn't included that, would the school be as better off now? Like I look at Repton and go, you have 2 World Rugby certified pitches there with ultra premium materials that have been installed.
And if it's worldwide rugby certified, it means that it's the ultimate depth for a surface. It means that you can play anything on there safely, comfortably. That's what it means, right?
Yeah. So the turf that's been installed is by a manufacturer called Rhino Turf. It's a 60 pile height. The infill that has been used as well is cork. Cork is primarily there because it's more sustainable and it offers a cooling factor of, depending on the region and exposure to sunlight, of between sort of 10 to 17 degrees on the pitch surface temperature. Now, if you imagine that the UAE is baked in sunshine for 10 months of the year, okay, it's now first week of January, temperature is a little bit cooler, you can play all day, you can run around outside and have a good time. But when it comes to the warmer months from April through to, I would say, October, can you use that space all day? Would you, as a either an adult in a recreational space or a student within a school, be comfortable going out at 11 o'clock in the morning for a PE lesson or for a run around with your friends? I would personally say no, but the system that we've installed there will help utilise the space.
See, we've got onto your favourite topics now, which is really detailed specifications. You love a good discussion about and details, but these are important things. And actually, you've tapped into. We're talking about sustainable outdoor 24/7 living, but all year round. And it was something that Brian from Icon spoke about too in another podcast, where it's constantly reviewing that outdoor air cooling systems is a part of a strategy to engage people all year round, but there has to be many different elements to it. And this is one part of it, whereby we've got clever, smart thinking surfaces. So that's why, and you brought it up, which is great. So with Gebal, we're partnering with Rhino Turf, and we'll be launching that in 2026. And it's for all of these reasons. It's the elements that you've mentioned, but as a parent with kids that play on these pitches too, with Rhino Turf and the cork infill, or the infill that's not rubber, the rubber component, it's 2 or 3 things from a parent's point of view. When their kids come back, it creates all sort of mess in your house when they take their boots off. But most importantly, and you get it from the coaches, we talk to the coaches, and particularly when it's super hot, when the kids are falling on the floor or they're on the floor, and the heat, you literally get black faces when it's particularly hot, and the carcinogenic fumes you get from that is that if there's progress in that way, and actually you've got a good enough surface that, whether it's through its hatching, keeps it down for more. So in terms of the alternatives like cork or coconut, this is massive. And this is massive for people playing through those hot months, but also from a safety point of view and a health point of view. So it'd be great for you to comment on that bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'd definitely, if I had kids, I'd rather them be eating coconut husk rather than rubber granules. It is a common comment that we have had, especially in the last sort of 2 to 3 years with regards to infill that's used on sports pitches. We don't want the comment we do not want SBR, styrobutadiene rubber is what SBR stands for. We do not want that because of carcinogenic fumes, heat emittance, and the fact that it just gets into socks and shoes and dissipates everywhere. Cork and coconut husks are not as dense as SBR, so they're a little bit more lightweight. It means they bounce around a little bit more, but through the technology behind it or the usage behind it, yes, it cools the pitch, which is what it's designed to do. Coconut husk will cool the pitch more than cork, is according to studies. There was a study done, not entirely sure on the region. They tested a section of sports turf with SBR and a section of sports turf with cork in. They tested the surface temperature of the SBR. It was 69.8 degrees. They tested it parallel to the area with coconut husk in, it was down to 52. That's a 17 degree Celsius cooling saving on your surface temperature. You can get quite ill. Imagine if you're running around as a child or even an adult at any time of day on that surface temperature, dehydration, sunstroke, detrimental to your health. So this insight or these investigations and studies into how do you cool the surface temperature of a pitch is vital for us as a premium installer and supplier to the likes of Rhino Turf going forward into future projects. The market itself and the people that we deal with, whether it's consultants or schools, are a lot more clued up on materialistic compositions now. It's very, very rare that you will see, for example, a spec sheet that we may receive on a BOQ that says, the infill type will be SBR. It won't be. It will probably be coconut husk. It could even be crushed olive vine. It could be cork. And that's more to do with the cooling aspect rather than the sustainability aspect.
So there's an education program over this, and it'll be something that we'll be doing massively of, and that's why we have these partners with Rhino. But it will also be, I'd imagine, will be hugely attractive to local sports teams to want to then use Repton's facilities, for example. So, my kids play at Harlequins. I imagine equivalent teams in Dubai would want to jump all over that.
When we did the initial sort of handover with the Rhino Turf rugby balls that were made by Vortex, so thank you to those guys, there was the comment raised to the head of PE there, what's the intention for the facilities? Are you going to rent them out to a local team? At that time, when it was brand new, I don't think the decision had been made. However, I do know now that they are intending to host international teams there for training. And that goes a long way, and that is a big standpoint for us as an installer.
It's a standpoint for us, but it's also revenue stream. But it's also the engagement of kids when they know that a team is playing at a certain place, and for certain reasons it inspires. Mm-hmm. So there's sustainability through playing through all the seasons, but it's also sustainability of keeping your interest at a club because you're connected to others. That's the other big great thing about Rhino and their connection with Rhino as a brand is all the things they do with World Rugby, in particular the South African rugby team, and all the things they provide with them. So it's a huge thing that we want to help people through the connections with those items and the brand, that we want to be building this surface around with that brand in this region because it does all of these things that we need. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Rhino Turf as a manufacturer as well, they've got a very long-standing history in rugby. London Irish, they've done the facilities for, but outside of that as well, if you look at football academies, Cobham Ground, which is Chelsea's, they've supplied the turf for that. You've got one of the best rugby union teams in the UK, and you've got a Champions League football team and a past Premier League winning team using their material at their training academies. If that's not a great case study to be able to go in to meet with a client with, I don't know what is. But now we have this one with Repton to show that, I don't know who the international teams are, by the way, but I can obviously find out at a later date. But it shows that that's the support and consideration that Repton as the client have taken to say, we have this facility, we are happy to host you, we're happy to what's the word again, I completely lost it now. Host you, facilitate you. We'll cut that part out.
So as your group head of sort of education in particular as well, the growth in Saudi is hugely exciting in all areas, in entertainment, leisure, schools being another, and I know that more and more school groups are now developing there. So is it the case that Saudi is 5, 10, 15 years perhaps from where the UAE is now when it comes to incredible public accessible sports facilities as well as sports facilities within the education sector, or actually is it moving faster than that? What are you seeing over there? And are the same attitudes over there, or have we got to do some work on that?
I think that Saudi as a country is a very, very vast open space with a couple of key cities: Riyadh, Jeddah, Dammam, obviously Neom up in the northwest. They've been awarded the World Cup in 2034, which is huge. I believe they've got the Winter Games in Trojena, which was one of the developments that's been awarded there. That in itself is a massive feat. I know that the rate of infrastructure that's going up there to be able to support these events, they have Expo as well coming up, that shows that they're fully on board with what the expectations are. that I think will drive further infrastructure here for sports stadia within the UAE, because I personally, I've said it for a long time, the UAE has the leisure side of things to host host visitors and host tourists, because with the World Cup in Qatar, a lot of people stayed here, they got on the shuttles over to Qatar. There's nothing to say that the UAE can't host that in 10, 15, 20 years if they get the stadium and the infrastructure right. I think that would be the domino effect to see it in the UAE.
Do you think, because I know there's a very famous project engineer that also has your surname. You might be related to him.
Oh, yeah.
I know that he's doing incredible projects on Sadia with the Guggenheim, but I'd imagine that the master planning that actually, I think Brian also from ICON was involved with on Sadia some time ago, but the development of the projects he's building, I bet you he must know if there is from a sporting point of view, the ambition for Stadia. Are there little birds saying that there is ambitions for Stadia across the UAE? Because if there are little birdies, we'll get them on the podcast.
I'm sure there's a few little birdies flying around that may say things, but if you Sports City, for example, Sports City in Dubai, drive past the same unfinished stadium every time on the way to the Dubai office. It's been there. Somebody's going to fact check me on this, but I'm going to say 20 years. It has been in the same sad, abandoned state for 20 years. On the other side of the road, you have where I believe Real Madrid host their academy, their junior academy, in Sports City next to the ICC. Manchester City, the same thing there. I personally would love to see the World Cup here. Someone who's grown up here since '99 on and off, I would love to see the World Cup be held here.
World Cup be held here, or would it be even more appealing if you had Sunderland doing their training camps here?
They've done it.
Have they?
Yeah, they've done it. Yeah.
What were you writing for them every day for like 3 years just to get Sunderland over here?
No, I didn't. The first time they came over, I remember I was actually living back in the UK. Second time they came over, I went to see them doing their open training, and I went to see them play a team from Saudi. And
so where was that? In Sports City then?
No, that was up at Gebal Ali Hotel, and the old grass pitches up there.
Were you there with your autograph book?
No, I did that when I was a kid. I did that when I was a kid. I went to what was the Charlie Hurley Academy, which is now no longer there. They've moved to the Academy of Light. But I remember my gran took me when they used to do sort of an open training. Used to be as a fan, used to be able to go down to the Charlie Hurley Academy and stand on the fence line and watch them train. And when they were coming out, they put a shirt through the window and sign it. So I've done that. But could Sunderland never have an academy out here? I think we've got to get to the Champions League first.
You're speaking very positively today after they got beaten 3-0 last night.
It's
Look
football.
at that. Proper true fan.
It happens.
Football. So back in England, back in the UK, it's tribal. You've got that connection, father, son, etc., etc. Are we seeing that now in the GCC? Are the local teams that are starting? We know in Saudi when you've got all the spend that's coming in, and you're bringing in players like Ronaldo, etc. Can you see if you're going to have that infrastructure built, and particularly in the UAE because the expat population is so large compared to the Emirati?
Mm.
Could we start seeing competing teams that might be backed by Man City over here? So we got the kid academies, I get that, but is there a wave of local expat professional sport that could start happening here with football, do you think? Because you've been here 20 years, right?
Yes, I definitely think it's gone in peaks and troughs, because when I was a kid here, there was a setup called the Centre of Excellence, which was run by a guy called Rod Hartshorn, who was ex-Manchester United Academy player, very good footballer, also a very good golfer. And that was sort of there must have been 30 or 40 kids between the age of 10 to 16. But out of that, some of them went on to make it. There was a lad who went to Aberdeen, played, I think he went to the academy, might have made one first team appearance. There was another lad here called Robbie Williams, not the singer. He was a very, very good centre forward, but very small, played for Wolves, was offered a contract by Mick McCarthy when he was there, and turned it down because he wasn't allowed to play in his preferred position, which was a centre forward, even though he was like 5'5". But there was a period where sports personnel were coming out of your very, very small sort of weekend, Wednesday night, Thursday night football training as such. I know that there is a young lad now, he's probably like 2021, I couldn't remember his name, who was at Everton, who went to school here, was signed by Everton. I think he's now at Fleetwood. I've always said that the UAE could be a breeding ground.
So it's interesting because on previous podcasts we've gone into skate, and Gebal's biggest design builder of skate parks in the world, and we're working with Mike Jobling, who was on one of our podcasts, and it was really eye-opening to me about the amount of local talent from a skate point of view that are getting good enough to not necessarily compete with the UAE, but actually they've been brought up there and they've learnt their craft through the communities of skate here, but they're getting good enough to be competing from an Olympics point of view. And there are Olympic qualifying events that get held here too. So when we were talking about Repton, you mentioned about the breadth of activity. It really is threaded throughout, because we've got facilities in schools, but we've also got the range of activities that are being serviced. So in general, from a Gebal point of view, and we talk about what was great in the past and what's coming next, the focus on spaces now, certainly in the public realm, and it sounds like it happens in education too, is getting broader and broader on how it gets integrated. So skate parks are often at the centre of these things because they are really great community spaces. Fitness is getting broader and broader. It's not a case of just putting some posts where you lean against and some other exercise equipment. There's a demand for broader and broader things. And part of that might be that there is housing developments or municipalities where they're providing what were good leisure recreation facilities are now having to diversify more and more in not just providing more, but actually looking at ways in which they can get people to come more often and potentially even spend money. So I know that there are lots of reviews going on in public spaces where what other experiences, whether they are entertainment or sport-based, can there be to attract people to come and do more things more often. So I think that sport's going to have a massive role to play in that basis in getting people out and about 24/7. And I'm fascinated to see how brands, whether they're sport brands or others, will be connecting to that. So we know that in Dubai, I think there was a report out recently where there was the properties that are connecting up with brands their value is going up at a higher rate than none, with Chelsea and with others. And I can just imagine that we might start seeing that in public realm spaces, sport and recreation spaces, where the municipalities or governments are trying to drive more customer, or in this case, user engagement through brands connecting up with public spaces. Could you imagine that with sport brands? We joke about Sunderland, but seriously, it's not just about having a Man City or a Sunderland football academy. Mm-hmm. It's more a case of actually the infrastructure being connected to these brands. Do you think that could happen?
Yeah, Chelsea have done it. With Damac, as I think that's what you were alluding to. Damac, one of the biggest property developers in the world. Chelsea, multiple-time Premier League winners, Champions League winners. Following from all around the world that. Okay, you might just have to put Chelsea or Damac or Chelsea by Damac to add X amount of million dirhams onto a project, but it's going to attract people. People buy from brands, don't they?
And what I'm also hoping to see is it perhaps with companies like Gebal, where actually it's not just a case of getting people attracted there, but actually can there be an increase in investment of how we look at the R&D of technology going into, whether it's surfacing or the physical kit or other things, that could be accelerated if you've got money coming in from brands. So if, for example, Chelsea are involved in the evolution of this certain type of football court where it's 2 against 2, and there's something that gets enhanced because they put money into that, that can accelerate the technology of that piece of equipment. It can accelerate or improve people's skills, and it accelerates people coming to these spaces. I can see a private sector or sport world coming into public realm sport by the sounds of things because of what we're seeing in Dubai and property, I think. I'm interested coming back to Repton School because I also know there's a massive running track put in there, isn't there? and the track looks amazing with the pictures I've seen. Innovation in other sports surfacing, I'd like to understand. I imagine we've gone a long way, and I know that there is, whether it's schools or public realm, certainly in Saudi and here, you get a big range of what is good and isn't good. So I'd love to know typical pitfalls that you see, that if the right money isn't spent, what happens and how quickly does it fall to pieces?
Ooh, don't know how long you got. But we'll use turf quickly. 60 mm pile height turf can be used for rugby, be used for football. Obviously, if it's a rugby pitch that you're intending it for be the primary sport, you need to have a shock pad underneath, whether it's a foam underlay or a cast in situ system. That's purely there for the HIC criteria, which is the head impact criteria. If you've got it for rugby, you've already passed the health and safety requirement for football. That's it. With that and the infill that goes into it per square metre, it could be around 30 kg. You're limited then to pretty much those two sports. You wouldn't be able to play field hockey on it because it would be like running through mud, and the ball, I know, will bounce and roll in field hockey, will not roll on that. So products that are used have to be appropriate and the specification has to be right. People then might look at it from a different perspective and go, okay, well, we have, say, 10,000 square meters. How can we make sure that it's appropriate for multiple sports and multiple users all at one time? Well, that's how we as a company will help the client. We know the size of a football pitch, if it has to be as per FIFA regulations, or if you're happy for it to be non-standard, we can then look at the outer extremities of the area and say, okay, you've got 3,000 square meters here. If you're wanting to play field hockey, or you're wanting to put in multiple sports courts that are multi-use games areas, we can still do it with artificial turf, or we could do it with a material, an acrylic composition onto an asphalt base, which is a hard court surface, where you could play netball, you could play volleyball, you can play badminton, you can play tennis. Utilisation of space all comes into play there. We do regularly see it where you have a scope or a brief from a client which doesn't quite make sense. We then have the sit-down talk with them, give them reference projects that we've done to say, okay, you're asking for 3 sports in this area.
And I can imagine that's where it's a reasonable position to be in. You think you know, or you know what you know, but you're not quite sure what you don't know. That's where the relationship with a company that's delivering is so critical, because you're going to go off in 2 different directions. One where you get what you want, but that might not be what you need, and the other one whereby you absolutely get what you need and then some, i.e. you get because you're going to be taken through the process properly.
Start to finish.
Yeah.
Gebal as a whole, design and build capability, is design and build through and through. We've got brilliant resources, fantastic design department, got unbelievable sales support who are all technically sound and savvy to be able to answer questions immediately. Obviously, from a sales, client-facing sales perspective, I have to make sure that I'm ahead of the game and ahead of our competitors as well to be able to give the correct product offering. We have seen it, unfortunately, in the market here where just to be able to get the contract from the client, people will say yes. We're working on a project now that a year ago somebody said yes to just to get the project, and unfortunately the client is now having to pay double to rectify it with the correct system to be put in place for longevity. And that's what people want at the end of the day. They want a product that is going to last. They don't want something that's going to be there for 2 years, 3 years. We, again, touching on Rhino Turf, they had an installation for a pitch in South Africa in 2008. Well, it's now 2026. They've just done the renovation there. 18 years. 18 years that pitch was
and that would have been some hostile weather too.
Oh, yeah. But it was used every single day. So through the correct maintenance, the correct preventive maintenance, and strong materials used, they've managed to get 18 years out of a system, which they've just replaced now for a fully sustainable artificial turf pitch, which is all of the turf has been made from recycled plastics. So again, recycle your plastic and I can build your football pitch.
No. Fascinating. And I think the range of knowledge when it comes to setting up a sports facility starts with the ground, and what's under your feet matters. Everything else above might be needed, but if what's under your feet is rubbish, performance is rubbish, experience is rubbish, people aren't going to want to come back. So it's so important, this area of business. Looking into the future, see what's next. So, well, the future is sort of now with the relationship with Rhino Turf and the things we've been talking about there. But is there anything you've seen, particularly across the GCC, where when it comes to a surfacing or anything in sort of sports infrastructure for people either at schools or in the public realm that you think is happening in the UAE or has been talked about? What's the cool things that are coming up?
I'm a big fan of the schools definitely looking towards the ultra premium range and not just buying from very lower end manufacturers just to service a need.
Yep.
The school says we need a football pitch. Well, let's go to X place and buy 4,000 square meters of this turf because it's dirt cheap. People are starting to, as I said before, they're starting to become very well versed in the materialistic compositions that are required to meet the standards for whether it's a school, it's a public realm development, and obviously to meet the climate, to match the climate, because that's something that has to be taken into consideration here. You have to match the climate. For me, that's why it's exciting, because I know the range of products that we have on offer with support from Rhino Turf or support from Sportscoat in the UK for acrylics, or even from an EPDM perspective for our running tracks that we do. I know that the product that we can give the end client will stand the test of time.
So the evolution of that and the innovation of that, that's where the future is.
Yes, and it's only, and with more and more projects coming online in the UAE, it's only going to better our manufacturers because they can learn from certain issues that they may have faced over time. I think it's just a very exciting time for sport as a whole across the GCC. I'm really, really excited to see how quickly, as we touched on about the World Cup in Saudi, how quickly this stadia comes to fruition, not just being a core and shell. To see, I think there's a fantastic design for a stadium in Jeddah that looks like a giant bird's nest. It's very similar to, I think there was one in South Africa before.
Yeah,
it'd be awesome to see that. Because I can fly to Jeddah. Can't really fly to.
I saw a stadium CGI on I think it was LinkedIn, which was an American helmet. The visor goes up, and that was the roof. Quite funny.
I wouldn't be surprised if
it was
that ended up
funny.
in the NFL in the States.
Oh my God, that was amusing. But the most exciting thing in the future of sport is not Sunderland winning Premier League. What's the chances this year? You don't have to answer that question.
Well, after
we
last
know
night,
the answer.
Yeah, after last night, I'd say it's probably not going to happen. I'm still confident that we can get a European space, whether it's the Conference League, Europa League might be slightly out of touch. We've got Everton on the weekend in the Cup, though. You never know, we could win the FA Cup and bypass everybody.
What's that? So you've just spoken about European Cup, FA Cup, and you've been up in the Premier League for half a season. I love the dream. Keep on dreaming, Calum. Keep on dreaming.
If you saw the odds on us to be relegated by Christmas to where we are now, you can keep dreaming. You can dream.
Oh, that's hilarious. Anyway, Calum, thank you very much. That was really, really interesting. And you're going to be back because we're going to be talking about the education sector. I know. I thought I'd put it onto here now so you can't say no. But in particular about the amount of things we're doing with schools, which is equally as exciting we've spoken about here. So you will be back. As will some of the guys from Rhino Turf talking about rugby, which will be amusing.
Great.
But thank you. Until the next time, thank you very much.
Cheers, Rob. Thanks for having me.